Good morning, everyone. Welcome to another session for our transition series on managing Social Security. So the SSI and SSDI. Marilyn Morrison is with us. She has presented more times at this transition series. She has been with us from the beginning. So would like to welcome her. Marilyn is the director of the Maryland Work Incentives Network, and she is a wealth of knowledge. And so we're so happy to have her with us today. Just as a reminder, all of the participants are on mute, so please type your questions into the Q&A box, and Marilyn will get to them. She'll stop throughout the webinar and take questions. Whenever you have, I don't want anyone to forget their questions, so feel free to type it right in there. And just as a reminder, this is being recorded. We'll share the recording along with the slides with you later today. Okay, and with that, we'll get started. Marilyn, thank you.
Thank you, Diane. It's so nice to be here. My name is Marilyn Morrison. I am the director of the Maryland Work Incentive Network, but I also work extensively in the Virginia system. I provided benefits counseling for about 15 years in Virginia and still have a private practice in Virginia, as well as working within Maryland and DC. So with that, let's get started. What we're going to be talking about today is just a general understanding of the differences between SSI and SSDI, the working rules for SSI and SSDI. We may not get to the working rules really in particular, only because there are a lot of changes to Social Security that have taken place that I really wanted to touch on, that we're going to look at as well. The last year with Social Security, there have been some amazing changes. So I wanted to make sure to get to those as well. And then we're going to talk about available work incentives for both. So before we start, I always like to start with a checklist for success. When I did my certifications with VCU to become a benefits counselor, I had to go through training. And one of the first things I learned was don't look for logic. And every time I say that, everybody laughs and they think that's so funny. But I had somebody from Social Security as I was in my training, because I'm that person that likes to know why. If you tell me why the rule is the way that it is, I'm going to follow the rule. But if I don't see a reason for the rule, I'm going to make up my own rule, or I'm going to find a shortcut. And while we're going through training, I kept asking questions. I kept raising my hand going, well, why is it like this? And why is the rule like this? And finally, somebody from Social Security leaned over in the room and said, don't look for logic. And that's the best piece of advice I can give you. The question I get a lot from a lot of my clients that I work with is, well, don't they know? No, they don't use logic. They only use what's on the paper. What you tell Social Security is the information they use to make a decision and to make continuing determinations. So you have to give them all the information. You don't edit anything. So when you call Social Security, that 1-800 number, make sure that you're keeping a record of the name of the person you talked to, the date that you spoke to them, what you asked and what they told you. The reason for that is if for some reason they give you erroneous information and you act on that, and it has a negative effect on the Social Security information that you have, it causes an overpayment, termination, all those bad things that can happen. You need to be able to show that this was not your fault and you were following the directions that were given to you. Make sure that you make copies of everything that you give to Social Security, both the forms you fill out and the evidence that you want them to have, and don't lose those copies. The reason for that is they're going to ask you for this over and over again. Once you start receiving Social Security disability, either SSI or SSDI, every couple of years, they're going to do a redetermination, just like they do with Medicaid, just like they do with the waivers. It happens every 3, 5, or 7 years, but they're going to ask you the same questions over and over and over again. Well, it makes it a lot easier if you don't have to reinvent the wheel, and you can just take the information you formally gave them, move it over, update it, and then send it on to Social Security. So make sure that you do keep copies in whatever way is going to be easier for you. I have had clients that have keep binders of everything, and it's just binder, 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 binder. I have others that literally just keeps everything in shoe boxes and storage boxes. Whatever your system is, keep those copies. Promptly open and read all the mail you get from Social Security. When they give you a deadline and a response date, compliance within that date is required. If they don't get information in a timely manner, they're going to make that decision whether they have that information or not. They're not going to call you and say, hey, we didn't get this information from you. We really need it. They're going to make the determination. If you're not able to attend a meeting, if you're going to be out of town, if they've scheduled a meeting where it's not convenient, make sure you call Social Security and let them know you can't make it on that date. And here's the reason why. And you need to make a new date. Don't just not show up. Because again, they're going to make a determination whether you show up or not, whether they have the information or not. Make sure that you're keeping all those paperwork, letters, and the mailing envelopes. The reason for that is, you might get a letter that says that's dated September 27th. Today's 27th, right? Yeah. September 27th. You might get a letter that says it's dated September 27th, but you don't get it until October 10th. But it says, we estimate, usually the letters will say, we estimate you received this letter 5 days after it's dated, but you received it 10 days after, and you have to respond within 15 days. You're caught. So that's a reason why you want to hold on to those letters, hold on to those envelopes, and then make that call if you're not able to get the information to Social Security in a timely manner. That's really important. Yeah, that, and don't lose those letters. That's another piece of it that's always really important. Remember that when you're working, you must report pay stubs every month to Social Security. You need to report to the correct field office. You can report by mail. You can walk into the office. You can use the SSA app. You can fax your pay stubs. If you don't have the fax numbers for your local field office, I have them, and you can always call me, and I'm happy to give those to you. I like faxing because you have a confirmation. You can show that you did report your earnings in a timely manner. I heard from a beneficiary yesterday, and I hear this all the time, that Social Security said, no, you don't need to report your earnings. We'll get your earnings from the IRS when those are reported. And that's true. The IRS does share income information with Social Security, but they're not doing it on a regular basis. They're doing it once a year, once you filed your taxes. So that means if you haven't reported the earnings and you're waiting on the IRS, and then you're just waiting to hear from Social Security, you could be wildly overpaid, because you could be waiting 12 months or 18 months before there's anything that they need to do. And in the meantime, there's overpayment after overpayment after overpayment. So you want to make sure to report those earnings every month. Remember, if a person receives SSI and or Medicaid, make sure that you're keeping your resources and assets below $2,000. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that as we move forward. And also, everyone, whether you're receiving disability or not, if you have a Social Security number, you should have your own My Social Security account. You can use that to report earnings. You can apply for benefits. You can track your application status. If you're getting close to your retirement age, it's going to tell you exactly how much you're going to be retiring with. It's really important that you utilize that My Social Security account. Social Security is requiring everyone to have a My Social Security account if there's going to be any applications. So you always want to look at that. Make sure that you apply, make sure that you are checking that on a fairly regular basis. Social Security is no longer sending out statements. So in order to get your statement, you have to have a My SSA account. And then remember, when a major life change occurs, either an address change, marriage, employment, loss of job, divorce, children, death, make sure you're reporting that to Social Security immediately. You're going to report both to the local field office as well as that 1-800 number. The address change is most important. I can't stress this enough. Make sure that Social Security has that address change. If they're saying, okay, we got it, call back and make sure they have it. The reason I'm telling you that is because Social Security does not forward mail. Your mail will not get forwarded from Social Security. So if there is an overpayment notice, if there is a question, if they have a status update, if they're sending you additional funds, you're not going to get that letter. They're not going to forward it. So make sure that they have the proper address listed in the My SSA as well as the local field office. It's most important. Okay, so when we're talking about Social Security disability, we're going to be talking about adult disability. We're going to talk about those initial application pieces of how to report, how to apply for benefits. And that's really what we're going to be looking at right now. When you're talking about adult disability, this is your definition of disability. And basically what this says is that SSA defines disability for both SSI and SSDI programs as the inability to engage in substantial gainful activity by reason of any medical impairment, must have lasted or be expected to last for a continuous period of not less than 12 months or result in death. There's a number that goes with substantial gainful activity, and that number is $1,550 gross. So basically what all this jumble of words is saying is that you have to show that the individual is not able to earn $1,550 gross a month without supports ongoing. And that means that maybe they need paratransit, they might need metro access, they might need a personal attendant, there might be extensive accommodations. All of those pieces has to be looked at. So it's not only the medical evidence that Social Security will look at, they're also going to look at, can this person just go out and get a job and work just like everyone else? If the answer is no, you need to let Social Security know. You have to be very specific. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that. When you're looking about childhood disability prior to the age of 18, you're looking at developmental milestones. And we're not going to be talking about that, but I really did want to just make sure that that's noted, that the definition of adult disability is different than that childhood disability. A person is considered to be an adult the month they turn 18. So it's not 21, it's 18. Person is considered to be an adult. Okay, so let's talk about the application process. Okay, so sadly, you cannot pre-apply. So if your child is turning 18 on September 1st, really the best time to apply for benefits would be the month after this person turns 18. You really don't want to do it the month that they turn 18 because they're not going to prorate the amount of SSI. Some, if a person's birthday is September 15th and you're applying on September 20th, they're not going to pay you for that full month of September. They're probably going to tell you, well, we're going to hold this application until the 1st of October. So it's best to apply the month after the person turns 18. Okay. You cannot pre-apply. The best way to currently apply for benefits is use the SSA online tool. If you do the application online, that actually is for SSDI. Now, when you're applying for disability, you're not walking in and going, all right, I'm applying for SSI, I'm applying for SSDI. You're applying for adult disability. So if you're going to use that online application, it's going to ask you, did you also want to apply for SSI? And yes, you do. You want them to look at both SSI and SSDI. Social Security will determine which category, which program is best to apply in. Right now, when you go online to Social Security, for that SSI application, it's going to ask you some minor questions: name, phone number, address, social security number. And then you're essentially requesting an appointment, and then you'll get an appointment. You're going to go to the appointment. When you go to the appointment, that's going to be the interview that will take place. That's going to secure the date of the application. At that point, they're going to ask you some pointed questions. They're going to ask you about, and we're going to talk about some of the questions they're going to ask about. At that point, paperwork will be mailed that is required to be completed and returned within a timeline. They're most likely going to give you something called the activities of daily living. They're going to give that to the individual, as well as if there's a rep payee. And you will need to return that in a timely manner. There will be I'm sorry, before you mail anything, make sure again you're copying everything. And then a second interview will take place either by phone or face-to-face. When you're making that application, make sure that you give Social Security all of the correct physician's information. Make sure that you're letting them know all of the hospitalizations. You can give them records that you have. You can give them medical records, but they're also going to be contacting the physician. So make sure that you're also contacting the physicians and letting them know what you're doing, letting them know that you are applying for benefits. The application has to be moved through the Social Security system within a certain amount of time. And oftentimes the person is denied benefits because the physician just didn't get the information back. The school system didn't return the information in a timely manner. So make sure that you're corresponding and you're coordinating with school offices, physicians' offices, anywhere that providing services that you're giving that contact information to Social Security, and give them all of those contact informations. The more evidence you're giving, the better. The more information you're giving, the better. So at that point, once that application has been made, and once all of the paperwork has been submitted, you've done your interviews, Social Security will then send everything over to Disability Determination, DDS. All right. At that point, in the medical evidence will also be looked at by DDS. The information will be received. They'll review it all, and they may or may not request more information. So they might ask about work history, if there's any work history. They might ask about when the disability began. They might ask about what treatment has been given. So make sure you have all of that in preparation. And truthfully, I would say give that all to them in advance. Give it everything to them. Don't wait for those questions. Now, they can ask, if they don't have enough medical evidence, they can ask and request that you see a physician of their own, which is a contracted physician. They're not given any information. So the contracted physicians are not given any information regarding the Social Security client that they're going to see. They might have some broad kind of, here's what you want to look for, but nothing really substantial. So if that happens, it's neither good nor bad. It just means Social Security needs more information. So make sure you're also sharing any information that you have with that physician. If they do need more information and they're sending you to a Social Security contracted physician. And again, DDS may request on behalf of SSA a medical exam. At that point, determination will be sent to Social Security. Now, they'll tell you it's estimated in 60 days. They'll tell you, oh, we'll get back with you within a couple of months. The average now has gone to 120 plus days, and truthfully, it can take up to a year. So I would say the best thing to do is check back, make sure that when you're going through the interview, you're getting the name of the claims rep that you're speaking to. If you're able to get the name and information of the DDS reviewer, make sure that you get that as well. And check in with them on occasion. That's okay to check in. It's perfectly okay to ask the question. It's perfectly okay to ask if they've received the information they need to receive from the physicians. It's okay to ask those questions. Ask them, do you have everything? Do you need more information? And that's okay. It helps them move the case along quicker. At that point, you're going to get a letter that you are eligible for benefits, or you're going to get a denial. At that point, you can apply for a reconsideration. If the denial at the reconsideration stage is denied, if there is a denial at reconsideration, then the next step is to appeal, and that's when you go to the administrative law judge. That can take anywhere from 3 to 4 years, just so you know. When you're doing an initial application, if once you've done the application and you go, oh, well, wait a minute, I really forgot to tell them this, or I didn't do this, or all of these things happen, and because of that, there's a denial, you can wait the 60 days and just reapply. Social Security does not do a compare and contrast and say, well, wait a minute, you told me over here that it was this, but now you're saying this, or wait, this, it doesn't happen. They, once you've passed the 60 days, that enables you to appeal the decision. When you're applying for a reconsideration, it just turns into fairy dust and it goes away. So they don't, so that is always another option, where if you get that denial, instead of going through that reconsideration stage and the appeal, you can just start over again. Your eligibility date would change, but that would be the only downfall with that. The one thing I did want to mention, though, is, and I said this at the start of the program, in the past year, since January 1st, there have been a lot of changes that have been made. Martin O'Malley, who is the new commissioner of Social Security, is a former governor of Maryland, has really stepped up and implemented some great changes. This was something that came across my desk actually at the beginning of September. But Social Security is actually going to roll out a fully online SSI application. So right now, if you're applying for SSI, again, they ask you for the cursory information, and then they call and you have to go in for the interview. But there is going to be a fully online SSI application using plain language questions. The updated version will pre-populate answers when possible and include seamless transitions. Well, we don't know what that means. The updated application will be available starting in December. So it's really important. The updated application will be available starting in December for first-time applicants aged 18 to 65 who have never been married and who are seeking Social Security and SSI benefits. So it'll be expected to expand to everyone in late 2025. So if you're applying anytime beginning in December of 2024, go online and look to see if that online application for SSI is available to you. If not, you'll still be able to go in and request the meeting through the regular channels. But that is one of the great improvements that Martin O'Malley has put into place. So let me see what the questions are. So even if the child has a disability from the start of life when they were born, even then, I'm not quite sure what the question is, but basically, you can apply for SSI, you can apply for Social Security Disability SSI prior to the age of 18, but it's a means tested program. So that means they're going to look at the parent's income. After the age of 18, even if they were disabled from the start of life, they're no longer going to look at the parent's income after the age of 18. So they're not going to look at parent resources. They're not going to look at parents' income. So, you know, you can certainly apply prior to that. The eligibility date is determined by the date of your application. So if you go online and you use that online system for SSI, that's your date of eligibility. So that's why I'm saying you don't want to use the date that you turned 18. You don't want to use the month that they're turning 18. You want to use the month after, because they're not going to prorate that full amount of SSI. They're going to say, nope, you're not eligible, or they're just going to hold the application. And, you know, so I always recommend go in the month after. Now, that doesn't mean in the meantime, you can't start gathering information. You can certainly go online and look at something called the adult checklist on the SSI site, on the SSA site, I'm sorry. You can certainly look at that and you can start gathering the information. Excuse me. You can certainly start gathering that information, but the actual application really can't start. You can't hit submit until they've turned 18. And again, it's always best to go the month after. Okay. So how is date of, yeah, so I just did that. How is eligibility date determined? Okay, let's move on. Did anybody have any other questions before I move on? Gives me a chance to take a sip. Okay, wait, got a question. All right. So if my child doesn't need SSI now, we pay his expenses, is it still good for him to apply? 100%. Yes, yes, yes. The reason, if he's turned 18, okay, if he's turned 18, the benefit to SSI, and we're going to get to that slide, is automatic Medicaid eligibility. So you may not need the money right now, and good for you. But guess what? It gets you it automatically will get you Medicaid eligibility. You're going to get through that determination process for waiver a lot faster if you're getting SSI. You're going to be able to get DOORS. You're going to get, I'm sorry, not it's DOORS here, DARS. You're going to be able to get DOORS services, more services. So, 100%. And I mean, that's great that you're applying, that you're paying all of his expenses, but at the same time, it's going to get you more. It's not just about the money. It's about all those additional services that are available once you have that SSI and Medicaid. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yes. So if SSA denies, you can reapply. You don't really want to wait once you get the denial letter. You really want to wait those normally in the letter it'll give you 60 days that you can appeal. And then if you don't use those 60 days to appeal, that's when the application just goes away. It can cause a lot of confusion if as soon as you get that denial letter. Now, the one thing about the denial letter that I didn't touch on that I really should touch on. When you apply for benefits, all right, remember you're applying for adult disability. You're applying for SSI and they're going to say, did you also want to apply for SSDI? And the answer is always yes for both. You might get a denial letter automatically that they're not eligible for SSDI. And it's going to say on the top header, Social Security, Disability, Retirement, and Survivors Benefits. If you get that letter, call Social Security to verify that your SSI application is still not moving forward. Because SSDI is different from SSI, but you never know, you might be eligible for both. So double check that denial letter before you jump to conclusions that you've been denied all your benefits. That SSI application might still be moving forward. They're just telling you they're not eligible for DI. So it's really important to look at that. Okay. All right. So let's move forward here. Why won't there it goes. Okay. So let's talk about SSI. So SSI is a cash benefit paid to individuals who meet medical, disability, and financial needs criteria. This is a needs-based program. The maximum amount, I'm sorry, that's the 2023 amount, but the maximum 2024 amount that a person can receive is $943. I have that at the bottom of the slide. That's the maximum anybody can get is $943. It is directly associated with Medicaid. So as soon as you get that letter that says you're eligible for SSI, you want to take it to that local DSS office and you're applying for Medicaid. So that's going to open a lot of doors for you. Remember, there's a resource limit of $2,000, and we're going to talk about in a little while about what constitutes a resource. Okay, that's really important. Again, the federal benefit amount for 2024 is $943. Within the next, I'd say anytime in October, when Social Security makes their announcement of all of their increases, that's when the increase for SSI is also going to be noted. All the numbers increase, and they put out something called a fact sheet, and that'll give you all of the SSI numbers, SSDI, substantial gainful activity. It'll also give you the basic retirement information as well. So I would say look for that somewhere within the next 30 days, anytime from today, literally into the next 30 days. It generally comes sometime in October. It's definitely going to be before the election, so look for that. Okay, so with SSI automatically comes Medicaid. Okay. I'm sorry, that's my phone, just don't pay attention. So with SSI automatically comes Medicaid. All right, in Virginia, it makes you eligible for Medicaid, but there is not you're not automatically eligible. You do have to apply for benefits in Virginia. In Maryland, you're automatically enrolled in Medicaid. In Virginia, you do have to apply, and you do have to, but you are automatically eligible. And that's really one of the selling points for SSI is that Medicaid eligibility. No, my slides are not working. Okay. So let's talk about SSI and Medicaid. SSI and Medicaid programs have specific resource limitations in order to be eligible. So that means that you cannot have more than $2,000 any month. Okay, that doesn't mean you can't earn $2,000. It means you can't save $2,000. And that's where these ABLE accounts and the special needs trust that I know the ARC of Northern Virginia provides is really important. Now, it's okay if the account goes up over $2,000 in the middle of the month. That's perfectly okay. But you want to make sure that $2,000 in any combination of accounts does not occur on the last day of the month at 11:59 and 59 seconds p.m. You don't want it to roll into the next month. So it can go above $2,000 in the middle of the month. Just make sure it's not going to be $2,000 at the end of the month. Okay. It is set by statute, and that's why the ABLE accounts are so important, and those special needs trust, because those are two of the structures that will allow you to save more than $2,000. Okay, so living arrangement. All right, let's get into it. So the living arrangement up until the spring, this is what the general rule was. Okay, so if the individual is 18 or older and someone provides their food and shelter, the base SSI check will be less than $943. Okay, if a person is paying their fair share of room and board, they may receive the full $943. So what that meant is that if an individual was paying, well, let me start again. So what Social Security would look at is, are they paying their fair market rate of the benefit? Are they paying fair market rate? So the issue with that is in Northern Virginia, fair market rate can be $1,000 a month. It's not possible for the individual who's getting $943 a month to pay fair market rate. Even if they're living with the parents. So even if the child is living with the parents, they're looked at as living in the household of another. If they were not paying their fair share of what they called room and board or food and shelter, Social Security would automatically deduct 1/3 of the federal benefit amount. Automatically. Okay. You would have to show a rental agreement, but it didn't make any difference if they weren't paying at least 1/3. Now, sometimes Social Security would look at it one way and they'd say, well, okay, you're charging them $500 a month. That's at least, that's more than 1/3 of the federal benefit amount. You're fine. We're going to give you the $943. And then there were other times when the pendulum would move the other way, and they would look and they would say, well, you know what? Rents in your area are this much. He's not paying his fair share based on the market value, the rental value of the area. So it doesn't matter that your child's paying $500 to you for rent. We're going to automatically take away that 1/3. If you're paying expenses for your child, you're not going to get the full amount. So Let me give you kind of an example of what it used to be, because the rule has changed as of March, and it's really important. So let's say the parents charge their son who's receiving SSI, they're charging him $400 a month to live with them. That's more than the 1/3 of the federal benefit amount, okay? However, Social Security would determine maybe that the current market rental value is $800. So even though the child is paying the parent $400 a month, Social Security is saying, wait a minute, the market value is $800. So it doesn't matter. They're still going to take away 1/3 of the federal benefit amount, even though child is paying that $400. Okay. Now, and it went back and forth, as I said, during the pandemic, it was absolutely that 1/3. In other state, in other times, it was looked at market value. That all has changed. All right. So everything has been turned on its ear now, and that rule has now changed. Okay. The rule now is that it's no longer, first of all, they're no longer looking at food. So it used to be that we would all say, well, make sure that you're showing that they're paying for food and shelter, or room and board. Nope. Food is no longer looked at in the equation. So you can take that off the table now. Now they're strictly looking at rental. That's all they look at. That's all Social Security looks at. The other thing that they have now changed is they've changed the that 1/3 rule, where as long as the individual is paying at least 1/3 of the federal benefit amount, it doesn't matter what the market says. It doesn't matter what the rental market says. It doesn't matter if the rental market is $1,200 for a 1-bedroom. It doesn't matter. As long as, this is really important, as long as what they say, a business arrangement exists. That means as long as there is a lease agreement in place, some sort of rental agreement that's in place, and as long as the individual is paying at least 1/3 of the federal benefit amount, they're not going to decrease that SSI amount. It doesn't matter what the rental market is. So that's a really important change that took place. And that was actually that takes place September 30th. I was wrong, not March 30th. And that takes place September 30th. So if you currently see that reduction in your SSI, if you're already receiving SSI and you currently see that reduction, put together a rental agreement. I have a rental agreement. The ARC of Northern Virginia actually has my rental agreement. Make sure that you put that rental agreement in place. Make sure that it's, I would say on average about $500 a month that you're paying. Take that. You have to physically take it to Social Security. You have to physically hand it to someone, and they will make the change. But that's really important. When you go to application, they're going to ask you, is the individual going to be paying rent? Answer is always yes. If it's, oh, heck no, I'm his parent, I would never do that, you're automatically going to lose 1/3. So make sure the answer is yes. Make sure you have that rental agreement with you when you go to that initial interview. And at that point, they're not going to apply what they called the PMV, the presumed maximum value. What they're going to look at is only the rental amount that that person is paying. They're not going to look at food anymore. They're only looking at rent. And as long as it's 1/3 of the federal benefit amount. I always say $500 only because the federal benefit amount goes up every year. So you don't want to only charge them exactly that 1/3. And $500 is a good amount to charge because, as the SSI federal benefit amount goes up, you won't have to change anything every year. But that change takes place September 30th. So it's a really important change. And I always have questions about the rental agreement. Okay. Can you please? Okay, I did that. If the beneficiary needs 24-hour medical care to manage illness, does the cost for nurses count against the $943 a month, or is that a separate payment through Medicaid? That's Medicaid. That's completely Medicaid, and you may want to look at waiver at that point. But the only way that it would benefit an individual is we're going to get something called an impairment related work expense. If I have a guardianship for my child, doesn't that mean they cannot sign a rental agreement? Well, technically, yes, that's true. But in this case, it's a rental agreement between you and your child. So they have to sign something to say they're going to pay the rent. If you say, no, he's not going to sign this, then you're going to be charged the 1/3. So I would say in this case, he's got to sign, somebody's got to sign it. So you can sign it on his behalf, explaining that you're the guardian and yes, he's going to pay it. So yeah, you could do that. But I think in this case, I think you could probably make an exception within that guardianship. Have him, it's more of an informal letter that they're agreeing to. It's not a full-on legal document. So it's more of an informal document stating that he will promise that they will promise to pay the rent, or you can sign it. But there has to be a business agreement in place, is what the new regulation states. Okay. All right, so let's move on here. All right, so I did put that change of rental in, the change of rental subsidy. And you'll see that it says September 30th, 2024, that they've implemented the new rule. And I know everybody's going to be getting these slides. So this is the bottom line. And you'll see if the business arrangement exists. So that's really the important piece of it. There needs to be some sort of business arrangement. It can be an informal document. The rental agreement that we have in place is not anything. You can get it notarized. You don't have to get it notarized. Social Security really doesn't care. They just want to see a signature and something that states that they will pay this money every month. Okay, so let's talk about the SSI resources. Okay, so Social Security will count cash savings accounts, stocks, bonds, CDs, IRAs, land owned but not lived on, anything owned that's converted to cash. So, if they're selling they have big yard sales and they're selling everything and they're using it to pay for food and shelter. That can be looked at. I've never seen that happen within Social Security, but it is in the regulations, so I do need to state it. They do not look at resources of the parent unless the beneficiary is under the age of 18, but they will look at resources of the spouse, and they will look at income of a spouse if there is a spouse. These are the pieces that are excluded. You can own your home, you can have household goods, you can have clothing that somebody will give you as a gift, a burial space, a burial fund up to $1,500, life insurance with a combined face value of not more than $1,500. Retroactive SSI or SSDI amount. This is really important. They will only exclude that for up to 9 months. So I've had a couple of beneficiaries that have said, "Oh yeah, I got a $10,000 back payment, but I know I'm going to college next year, so that money is just sitting in my account." And that person could be over-resourced because after 9 months, it is looked at as a resource. So that's why the ABLE accounts and the special needs trust are in place, so you can do something with that money. Property in a specific trust, that is that special needs trust. A past plan, a plan to achieve self-support, property essential for self-support. You can have one automobile, that's okay. You can have an automobile. And then remember, ABLE accounts, special needs, or other exclusionary accounts. So the ABLE accounts are excluded from, as well as those special needs trusts. So it's really important that you look at that and you monitor it every month. Make sure that if that individual is receiving the full amount of SSI or even anything SSI related, and you're charging them rent, make sure you're pulling that rent out every month. Make sure that you're looking at that bank account at the end of the month, especially if a person is working, to make sure that you're not carrying over more than $2,000 into the next month. The issue with that is that can cause you to be terminated from eligibility. It will cause an overpayment. They're not going to take the difference. So if you have $2,050 in your bank account on the last day of the month that rolls into the next month, they're not going to take $50 from your SSI. They're going to take the full amount of $943. So it doesn't matter how much you might be over that $2,000. They're taking that full amount. So it's really important that you monitor that and make sure that that doesn't happen. There's no way around it. I mean, basically, they're going to take the money. So make sure that you're monitoring that. Also, at initial eligibility, make sure there's no funds someplace else that you might not be aware of. I actually have this happen quite often that, grandparents start buying savings bonds, or they buy stock, or they buy something in the name of the child when the child's born. And then they just sort of like keep putting money into it. Oh, this is their college fund. I really want to help them with this. Maybe you forget about it. Maybe, that happens. You forget this is even happening, or, we're all busy. Make sure that something is done with that money before you go to initial eligibility, because they will find it, first of all, and then they will assess the overpayment based on the number of months they paid you before they found it. I unfortunately had one individual who had one of these accounts, and there was about $14,000. Mom just forgot that grandparents were doing this for them, and they applied for SSI. The young man was found eligible for SSI. And unfortunately, along the way, they found the account, and they assessed a $14,000 overpayment, which is unfortunate because they took everything from that account that they could have moved into an ABLE account, and they had to use it all to pay back Social Security. So make sure that you're looking at that as you move forward. Okay, so this would be a good time to answer some questions. Okay, if a guard, I think let me see, did I answer everything? Okay, how does SSA money monthly compliance with the resource limits? They have access to your bank accounts. Plain and simple. You're going to give them that information. So they're monitoring it, but they're not monitoring it in real time. So what can happen is 12 months after they've been overpaying you for 12 months, you're going to get a letter that says, hey, we have information that says your account went over $2,000 in March of 2024. We need to see what's going on with your accounts. So I would say they find it. I've never not had anybody say, oh, this money is in my account, and they've never found it. They will find it. They just won't find it that month. But you might get a letter 6 months later that says, well, we noticed 6 months ago this happened. Okay, what about, this is a great question. So what about a 529 account for education? So the 529 is excluded from a resource because the money does not go directly to the child. It goes to the institution. So the child never has direct access to it. Really, what they're looking at is any accounts that the individual can directly access, whether there is a penalty or not. The child, even though it's in the child's name, they can't borrow from a 529. They can't take the money out for something else. And when you use the 529, you're not taking it out and giving it to the child. You're paying it directly to the college institution. So that's where 529 is excluded. Let's see if I had anything else in here. Can we apply for SSI and Medicaid at the same time? Nope. I mean, you can apply for Medicaid, but you can't apply for both. I mean, yeah, you can, but it's not, you might get denied your Medicaid at that point because you're not showing the Medicaid that you're applying for is called ABD Medicaid. So it's age blind and disabled Medicaid. You can't apply for age blind disabled Medicaid until you've been found to be age blind and disabled. And that's where the SSI disability, that's where DDS comes into it. And also if you're applying for waiver. So remember, waiver is different from Medicaid. And I know there was a Medicaid program within this transition series. Remember, Medicaid waiver applications are different than regular, just general ABD Medicaid. But if you're applying for waiver, that's a different application process, and you can apply for waiver and SSI at the same time. And in fact, waiver applications do encourage application for SSI at the same time, only if the individual is over the age of 18. But otherwise, no, you do have to apply separately. You're applying for SSI first, and then once you get that approval letter that you have been approved for SSI, you're just going to take that letter to Medicaid, and then they're automatically going to give you that eligibility when you apply. Okay. All righty. Okay, so let's answer some commonly asked questions when we get started here. How much can I earn and keep my benefits? If I work, will I lose my Medicaid? Is there a way I keep more of my SSI check while working? And when and what must I report to Social Security? So we're going to ask some of those. We're going to answer those questions. And also, can we give kudos to Dwight Schrute in the corner? Because I love Office. That's my thing. All right. So okay. So let's talk about the impact of wages on monthly SSI payments. SSI is a month-to-month benefit. You do have to report wages every single month. SSA will reduce the maximum SSI by a portion of the total accountable income each month. You're always going to gain more by working than what you lose from SSI. To give you some idea of how the calculation works, it is with a couple of exclusions. It's for every $2 a person earns, they lose $1 of their SSI. So essentially, a person can earn $1,200 a month, and the most they're going to lose from their full SSI of $943 is about $520. So even earning $1,200 a month, a person still could be getting about $400 from SSI. So it is month to month. You do need to report those monthly. What Social Security will do is once you've started reporting that income, they'll put an estimate in the system. So if for some reason you forget to report, they're still going to make that deduction based on the previous earnings. So it is important that you report monthly. And again, you can do that through the My SSA app. There is a SSI income reporting app. You can fax that information in. You can drop the pay stubs at the local field office. You can do all of that. Under SSI rules, there are no earnings limits. Doesn't matter. There are no earnings limits. Okay, so within both SSI and SSDI, there is something called impairment-related work expenses. And those are any out-of-pocket expenses that support the disability and allow a person to work and to earn income. And it can also be those items or services that are needed for non-work activities. So what we're talking about is transportation is a huge one. Metro access every day, absolutely out of pocket, huge. There was a question early on about, let me find it, about if the beneficiary needs 24-hour Medicaid care to manage illness, does the cost for the nurses count? What that would do is if the individual is working and the out-of-pocket cost for those nurses would be looked at as an impairment-related work expense, and that brings down the countable earned income. So using that same example that I used earlier, that if a person earns $1,200 a month, they would lose about $525 of their SSI. If a person is earning $1,200 a month, but they're paying $600 a month for out-of-pocket expenses for medical care and for transportation, then that would mean that they would lose about, let's say, they would lose about $300 from their SSI. So it does bring down what a person would be deducted from their SSI. So it does make a big difference. You do have to report those monthly, but it's a wide range of expenses that they allow. And if you're not sure what is allowed, you can always give me a call and I can give you a yes or no answer. It's very broad. Transportation is the biggest one. It might be any adaptive technology. It can be any assistive technology. It can be, maybe there's a major some sort of surgery in the middle while a person is working, and there's some major cost of surgery. Maybe there's a major cost. There's a wheelchair replacement. Maybe there are hearing aid replacements. There are larger ticket items. They'll actually prorate those out many months. It does not include out-of-pocket premium payments for insurance. It does not include any expenses that were incurred prior to employment. And the expense must be reasonable. So and what that means is, okay, you might need, you have an adapted automobile. But wait a minute, you wanted that cyber truck and you want it to be adapted. That's probably not going to be something they're like, okay, we're going to give you $150,000 for that. So it does need to be reasonable. And please don't get a cyber truck. It's really ugly, but that's a whole other conversation. But again, if you're not sure about the impairment related work expenses or how to report them, you can always give me a call and I'm happy to help with that. Okay. Yep. All right. So there's also something called a student earned income exclusion. And this allows an individual who are under the age of 22, who are regularly attending school, to exclude income up to a certain amount. So that working deduction that I just talked about, that, for every $2 the person earns, they lose $1 of their SSI, that is completely excluded if a person is attending school. In 2024, the limit is $2,290 a month. So if a person is earning $2,290 a month, that's all excluded, up to $9,230 a year. So I've had a lot of folks that are in college and they're getting a stipend, and maybe they have an internship in the summertime where they're getting $1,500 a month because it's some sort of a summer internship program. That is all excluded if you can show that the person is regularly attending school. And even if it's a summer program, they might be in high school, but maybe they're transitioning to college, or maybe, as long as you can show there's enrollment. So if there's summer school, as long as you can show there's enrollment in the fall, then the student earned income exclusion will apply. There is no form for this. There's just there's backup materials, and there's just a simple request made to Social Security. And this will pertain until the age of 22. There's also something called a plan for achieving self-support. What this is, the PATH plan will help the student pay for items or services that they need in order to achieve an occupational objective. This is not strictly limited to students. This can be anybody. If a person wants to start a business, it's to achieve that occupational objective. And what this will do is, if a person is working or they're receiving income, what's called unearned income from another resource, that money goes into a special account and the SSI is not reduced. So it gets that individual that full $943 a month, plus they're able to earn income. They're able to save over the $2,000 in resources, and they're able to use that money for college tuition, for books, for housing, anything that's going to help that individual achieve an occupational objective. It's a really good program for just the right person. There is a form for that. It's about a 15-page document. I help people with that all the time. It's a really great program, but it has to be very specific. So it can't be, oh, well, I just want to go to college. Why do you want to go to college? Oh, I don't know. I'm not sure what I want to do yet. No. I'm going to college to study X, Y, and Z. It's a really amazing program to be a part of, and I'm happy to assist with any of that. I had a young woman early on when I started benefits counseling that was going to Northern Virginia Community College, and she lived in Loudoun County. She lived in a group home immediately across the street from the Loudoun County satellite of Northern Virginia Community College. And she wanted to become a CPA. And she was going to Northern Virginia Community College to get her bookkeeping certificate. And then she was going to move over to George Mason at some point. And one of the things that she put into her past plan was that she needed a car because there were times when she had to take classes in Annandale. And she lived in Loudoun County. And in order for her to get to Annandale, she'd have to take a bus to the county line of Loudoun County, then get another bus that would take her to a metro stop that would then take her to the Annandale campus. So it could take her all day to get to one class. So it was really frustrating. This was long before, we were doing a lot more virtually. So she needed a car, but she lived immediately across the street from Loudoun County, Northern Virginia Community College. So we worked with the past cadre. You don't go through the local field office. You do work with the past cadre, and her case manager explained that she was ready to move to transitional housing. She didn't need to be in the group home, but the reason why she was still in the group home was because it was immediately across the street from Northern Virginia Community College, and that's where she was going to school. So we worked it out with Social Security and the past cadre that when she was ready to move, she would be able to purchase the car, and they approved the PATH plan. All she needed was the car. She had gone out, she got a Pell Grant, she found funding for a new computer, she found the funding for books, she found all this other funding, but all of those, if she hadn't, we would have put those into the PATH plan. So she was able to get her bookkeeping certificate. She went on to George Mason. She's now a CPA. So for the right person, a PATH plan really is a great way to go. Okay, so at some point when a person is working and they're earning income under SSI rules, they may get to the point where they get to the break-even point where they're not eligible for a cash benefit. Medicaid is kind of tricky on this one because the general Medicaid rules state that you must be eligible for at least $1 of SSI to maintain eligibility to Medicaid. So then the feds came in and went, wait. Let's make it so a person can maintain their Medicaid if they need to work. So if an individual meets the basic eligibility rules, they don't have more than $2,000 in resources, and they need Medicaid to work. They need medical. They need their health care. They need whatever Medicaid is using. Then they can earn far above the break-even point and still maintain Medicaid. So in 2024 in Virginia, an individual can earn up to $45,000 and still maintain their age blind and disabled Medicaid just by showing they need the Medicaid to work. So even if a person gets to that break-even point where they're not eligible for the cash benefit, that's okay. You still stay on the rolls as being eligible for SSI. You're just not eligible for the money, but you're still on the rolls. So if something happens to the job, if something happens where you have to stop working, your SSI is just going to come back. You're not going to be terminated. Now, 1619B does need to be renewed yearly, so you need to be remembered to do that. But the first year that you're at that non-pay status is what they call it. They put your payments into suspension because of that non-pay status, because you're earning at that break-even point. 1619B will kick in. The second year, you do need to reauthorize that and just let them know, yeah, I still need my Medicaid. Just keep me on 1619B, and that can stay with you indefinitely. Okay, so let's talk about SSDI. Okay, so SSDI or Title II is there's a couple of ways that an individual can be found eligible for SSDI. One of those ways is there is a required work credit. That's that FICA that we pay into every month. So you have to have a certain number of credits. To be found disabled, you have to have at least 20 hours, 20 credits. So that would be 20 quarters. There is a 5-month waiting period before, once you're found eligible for SSDI, you're not going to start getting the money right away. With SSI, your date of eligibility is the date of application. And as soon as you're found eligible, you're probably going to get a back payment to that date of eligibility. When you're talking about SSDI, there's a date of eligibility and there's a date of entitlement. So the date of entitlement is that 5-month waiting period. So even though you might be found eligible for SSDI, you have to show, remember, 12 months if you're not able to earn over a certain amount. You're still going to wait those 5 months before you're going to start getting your cash benefit. They're always going to look at that SGA, which, remember, was $1,550. SSDI is more of an all or nothing benefit. So either you're eligible for all of it or you're eligible for none of it. It doesn't have that 2-to-1 piece to it. There are very specific timelines and protected periods of time. It's an all or nothing benefit. So you want to be really clear about what those working benefits are. Again, they look at medical eligibility. Another way that a person can be found eligible for SSDI is something called Childhood Disability Beneficiary, a CDB, or they sometimes will call it a Childhood Disability Benefits, a DAC, which is called a Disabled Adult Child. What this means is if you're found to be disabled prior to the age of 22, you have not been legally married to a non-Title II, so you haven't been married to somebody that's not receiving benefits. And you don't have a lot of work credit on your own. Social Security, when your parent has either retired, become disabled, or is deceased. So once a person opens their own Social Security record, the individual that's designated as a CDB or a DAC will get approximately half of what the parent is receiving. So what that means is, for example, you apply for your child to start getting SSI at age 18. And they start getting their SSI, and everything is awesome. And now a few years later go by, and now it's time for you to start getting your retirement with Social Security. So you open your work history, you get your Social Security retirement check based on your FICA. Your child who's been getting SSI since they're 18, and they might be 35 by this point, and they're still getting SSI, will get approximately half of what you're receiving. Your money will not decrease, but that'll be half of theirs. So in some cases, for instance, if you're going to be getting $3,000 a month in your own retirement earnings, your child who's been getting SSI will now flip to SSDI Title II, and they're going to get approximately $1,500. When we pass, unfortunately, we do pass, that child who's getting what's called CDB benefits at that point will get approximately 80% of what you're receiving. So there's advantages and there's disadvantages to that piece of the puzzle. SSDI has eligibility to Medicare. There is a 24-month waiting period. So you're not going to, unlike SSI, where you get your Medicaid immediately once you're found eligible for SSI. Medicare will happen 24 months after your date of eligibility determination. So the date that you start receiving that SSDI check. And again, you'll get Part A, Part B, and Part D. Now, if you're also getting Medicaid at that point, Medicaid will pay that Medicare premium, and they could give you additional supports as well. You cannot, by the way, if you're getting Medicaid and then suddenly you find out, if the individual is receiving Medicaid and then they find out they're now eligible for Medicare, Medicare has a cost of $174.90. They cannot deny Medicare. You can't say, nope, I don't want Medicare because I already have Medicaid. Medicaid requires that Medicare enrollment, but Medicaid will pay the Medicare premium, but they require it. You can't opt out of it. So we just talked about CDB. CDB is that monthly cash benefit to a child based on the earnings of the parent. Found to be disabled prior to the age of 22. The disabled adult child will get approximately 1/2 of the parent's benefit if the parent is living. They'll get approximately 3/4 of if the parent is deceased. If both parents are disabled, retired, or deceased, the child is entitled to CDB benefits on the higher account. So if both parents are receiving their benefits, they're going to get half of what the higher number is. Okay. So let's talk about this. This is called the Pickle Amendment. Sometimes they call it special categories or special populations. Now, when a person, so let's go back to that CDB piece of it. When a person is found eligible for the parents, because of the parents' work history, and they start getting, say, $1,500 a month from Title II or SSDI, they're not eligible for that SSI benefit anymore. And remember, eligibility to SSI comes with Medicaid, comes with Medicaid. So what can happen if a person moves from SSI to SSDI, they could potentially lose their Medicaid. It's really important for people to maintain Medicaid because it, as I said, it does give expanded services that maybe a person is not going to get from Medicare. Under what's called the Pickle Amendment rule, the Medicaid eligibility will protect that SSI recipient who loses their SSI because of either a cost of living adjustment or they move over to the Title II or Social Security side because of their parents' work history. What they say is they move over to DI and they lose that SSI eligibility by no fault of their own. They don't lose SSI because of their own work history and now they've moved over to SSDI. They lost SSI because one of their parents opened their work history with Social Security. It was not their fault. So that's where that Pickle Amendment comes into play. And that's when it's a federal statute. You're going to work with the state Medicaid office on this, the DSS. You're going to start Department of Social Services, but you're not going through the feds, but it is a federal amendment that maintains that Medicaid eligibility, even if a person is no longer eligible due to an increase in income because of SSDI by no fault of their own. Okay, so let's talk about overpayments because there's been changes to overpayments. Okay, this is another big one. Okay, so this is effective March 25th, 2024. So it used to be when a person got an overpayment letter from Social Security would take all of the money. They would take the entire check. So if you had an overpayment from SSI of, say, $2,000, let's say $3,000, they would take that full $946 a month. They would take your 100% of your entire check, unless you set up some sort of payment plan where they would only take a certain amount out. And you could set it up where they would only take 10%. You know, people are living on that 943. I mean, there are very few of us that are lucky enough to have more than 943 a month. A lot of people are only living on 943 a month. They depend on that money to live. So effective March 25th, 2024, Social Security changed that default withholding rate from 100% to 10% or $10, whichever is greater. So that means now they're not going to be taking 100% of either the SSI or the Title II. It's automatically going to be 10% of the cash benefit to pay back any of those overpayments. Okay. The other piece that happened is the burden of proof has shifted away from the claimant in determining whether there is evidence that the claimant was at fault in causing the overpayment. So now it used to be that you could say, listen, this overpayment is not my fault. I didn't know about it. I didn't know anything about this. I didn't know. Nobody told me I had to report earnings. But then you'd have to show proof that you didn't know. Well, how do you show proof that you don't know something? Now you can come in and you can file a waiver that states that I didn't know I had to do this. I reported my earnings every month. You could say, for instance, if you reported your earnings every month and then they're still assessing the overpayment because they did not adequately report the earnings into the file, you can show proof and say, look, this is not my fault. I reported those earnings every month. You all didn't do it. So it now is shifted where they have to show proof. It's no longer about you showing proof that you didn't know or that you did your due diligence. They have to show proof that you didn't do your due diligence. They've also extended the repayment plan. So it used to be 36 months, you had to repay everything that you owed. If you that was it. So I mean, if I've had beneficiaries that have a $20,000 overpayment. Well, you can't pay that in 36 months. That's not possible if a person's only getting $1,200 or $1,400 a month from SSDI. They've now extended that to 60 months. So you can set up a payment plan with Social Security. Social Security does not charge interest, and they will set up that payment plan. Again, they've also made it easier to request a waiver if you believe that you're without fault and you can't afford to pay it back. They've just made the request easier. It's just a phone call of saying, I need a waiver and here's the reason why. The other thing that they've done, which is really amazing, is that Social Security will waive an overpayment of $2,000 or less without further development. All you have to do is file something called an administrative waiver. And literally, if the overpayment was incurred after that March 25th date, they will waive the $2,000. There's no burden of proof to show anything other than, hey, I just want this waived. It's less than $2,000. And you use that administrative waiver fee. Okay. It was $1,000 from January 1st, and then they moved that to $2,000. It does not include an outstanding balance. It's only based on new overpayments that are assessed after that March 25th date. So if you have an existing overpayment, there's really nothing you can do about it other than possibly file a waiver. But if you've already been paying on it, there isn't a whole lot that can be done. But if it's a new overpayment, you can file that administrative waiver. So again, to avoid an SSA overpayment, I probably should talk about a little bit about what I do and how I missed that whole part of it. So I am part of a program called the Work Incentive Planning and Assistance. There are 70 programs throughout the country. I am the director of the Marilyn Work Incentive Network, which is the Work Incentive Planning and Assistance. I am on a cooperative grant with Social Security to provide benefits counseling. So you don't need a referral to see me. If you're in Maryland, there is no cost. In Virginia, I'm happy to give a consultation. And if it gets a little bit more complicated, we may have to talk about a little bit more. But for questions of, hey, I'm working, how do I report this? You can certainly give me a call, and I'm happy to answer those questions. You can also email me, but I am tasked by Social Security to provide benefits counseling. There is a Northern Virginia cohort that goes through the Norfolk SIL that you can also contact. They will do something called a benefit analysis. And what a benefit analysis is basically just a very big document giving you all of your options for working, receiving benefits, your Medicaid, if you're on waiver, if you're on SNAP, if you're getting housing. They're looking at everything. We look at the entire person. So in order to avoid overpayments, I always really stress that benefits analysis. If you are working through DARS, DARS has something called the Work Incentive Specialist Advocates, and they will provide that service as well. Make sure that you're submitting your pay stubs and those impairment-related work expense receipts every month if you're working. The one thing I didn't say when we was talking about reporting working is that when you stop working, make sure you let Social Security know that you've stopped working. The reason for that is, again, they're going to put that estimate in. And if the estimate is in the system, that estimate's going to stand until you tell them otherwise. And there have been times when I've run something called the benefits query for an individual, only to find out that they haven't worked in a year and a half, but because they never reported to Social Security that they stopped working, their SSI was still being reduced, and they didn't know why it was being reduced. So even if you stop working, make sure you let Social Security know that you've stopped working. Otherwise, they're still going to continue to deduct whatever that estimate is. Remember, there is a resource limit of $2,000. And then if you have any questions, again, you can contact me. I am a community work incentives coordinator. I am also a work incentive specialist advocate. I've worked in Virginia for 20 years. And then I'm also within the Maryland and DC structures. So I can always give you the pros and the cons if you're thinking about moving to Maryland, if you're looking at other states. I can give you those pros and cons as well. So I would say it's always important to get that information. You can also call the Ticket to Work helpline, and they're happy to give you some of this information as well. And this is my information. You can call me anytime. You can email me, and we can always talk about the situation. All right, let me see about questions here. Nope, I don't have any more. If you have any questions, I know we have a little extra time, right, Diane? I've got 7 minutes. So I'm going to keep my contact information up, but if you have any questions, just type it into the queue and I will get to it. I think I answered all of the questions that were there.
Yes, you did.
It looks like somebody raised their hand.
Let's see.
I don't know. Does anybody have any questions? Do you see anything?
No, there's nothing in there and nothing in the chat.
Diane, do you have any questions that I never end on time. You should give me props on this. I'm always running late.
No, you were perfect, right on.
And I added extra information. Should we get a bank account before applying for SSI? Yes, that is a great, great question. Yes, get a bank account before you apply for SSI, because when you apply for SSI, they're going to want to know where to send the money. They're not sending hard checks anymore. So yes, get a bank account. Make sure the bank account is in the individual's name. You can get it as a rep payee account, but 100% you can do that. You can get the SSI directly deposited into an ABLE account if you have an ABLE account as well. But yes, 100% get a bank account, because they're going to want that, and you're going to hold up your benefits. They won't be able to pay you until you give them that bank account information.
Any other questions?
And you can always call me. I mean, I say this a lot, that a lot of times what's going to happen is you're going to walk out the door, and then once you start the process, the questions will pop up. Because right now it might be just, this big idea. It just might be just too much information. But once you get into the process, the questions and the information start to make sense. So you can always call me. You can the number you're seeing on the screen is actually my cell phone number. You can text me, or you can email me, and I'm happy to answer any questions. And I'm going to stop share.
There is a question in the Q&A. How do we find out about waitlist times, as this might differ from year to year? Do you mean waitlist I'm not sure if you mean waitlist for the waiver.
I mean, waitlist for the waiver is, yeah, I mean, I'm sure the ARC knows, but I think what's it at now? About 10 years now, right? It's still 10 years.
It's based on urgency of need. So It's not like you're just on a list. So you have to maintain communication with your support coordinator to let them know, what's happening in your life, more needs, more.
Yeah, and that can change. Waitlist for the application for Social Security, you can go online and you can look at that. But right now, unless anything changes, unless Congress gives more money, unless something happens like really major and the systems are changed, it's going to take anywhere from 9 to 12 months. Now, if there's a dire need, when you go into Social Security, there might be a situation where there is a dire need, and you can let Social Security know, and they do have a fast track application process if there is a dire need, but you do have to state what that dire need is, and it has to be within the list of what they call the blue book. So it has to fall within the parameters of the urgency of the medical condition.
I'm just gonna, Marilyn, just give me 1 second. I just want to, everyone, I'm going to thank you all for coming. You can stay on. I'm just going to stop the recording.
Okay. So let's